I opened my water bill on a Tuesday morning in late September and nearly choked on my coffee when I saw the number. $247,863.42. The paper shook in my hands as I read it again, convinced there had to be some kind of mistake. I had lived in my modest 3-bedroom ranch house in Meadowbrook Heights, Arizona for 6 years, and my monthly water bill had never exceeded $80, even during the scorching summer months when I watered my lawn twice a day. My name is Garrison, and I am a high school chemistry teacher who lives alone after my divorce 3 years ago. I drive a 13-year-old Honda Accord and clip coupons on Sundays. The idea that I had somehow used $250,000 worth of water was absolutely insane. I immediately grabbed my phone and called the water department, my heart hammering in my chest. The woman who answered sounded bored. Meadowbrook Municipal Water, this is Jennifer speaking. Hi, yes, I just received my bill and there has to be some kind of error. It says I owe over $240,000. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. What's your address? 1847 Saguaro Drive. More typing. Okay, Mr. Garrison. Let me pull up your account. Oh my. What does that mean? Sir, according to our records, your property used approximately 3 million gallons of water last month. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I live alone. I take 1 shower a day. I don't even have a pool. Well, our meters don't lie, sir. We detected an unusual surge in usage starting on August 28th, and it continued until September 15th when our field inspector noticed the abnormality and flagged the account. If you noticed an abnormality, why didn't anyone call me? We sent a notice to your address on September 10th. I had received no such notice, but that seemed like a secondary concern at the moment. Listen, there has to be a leak somewhere. I would have noticed 3 million gallons of water. Have you checked your property thoroughly? I mean, I haven't done a full inspection, but my yard isn't flooded. My house isn't underwater. Where would 3 million gallons even go? Jennifer's tone shifted to something more sympathetic. Sir, I recommend you contact a plumber immediately to inspect your property. In the meantime, this bill is still valid and payment is due within 30 days. I can't pay $250,000. I'm a teacher. You can set up a payment plan, but there will be interest charges. Would you like me to transfer you to our billing department? I hung up. My hands were shaking and I felt like I might throw up. This had to be a nightmare. I called 3 different plumbing companies and finally got someone to agree to come out that afternoon. His name was Derek, and he arrived in a white van at 2:30, just as my last class was ending and I was speeding home. Derek was a heavy-set man in his 50s with a thick mustache and kind eyes. He listened to my frantic explanation and then spent the next 2 hours examining every pipe, faucet, and connection point in my house. He checked the toilets, the washing machine, the water heater, everything. Finally, he came back inside, shaking his head. Connor, I've looked everywhere. Your house is tight as a drum, no leaks inside at all, but the water department says I used 3 million gallons. Yeah, that's a hell of a lot of water. If it's not in your house, then it's got to be in your main line between the meter and your house, or somewhere underground on your property. How do we find it? Derek scratched his chin. Well, that's going to require some excavation. I can bring a crew out tomorrow with ground-penetrating radar to see if we can locate any moisture pockets or broken pipes underground. But I've got to tell you, this kind of investigation and repair doesn't come cheap. How much are we talking? For the investigation, probably around $3,000. The repair could be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 depending on what we find and how deep we have to dig. I felt the walls closing in. I had maybe $8,000 in savings. Okay, do it. I need to figure out what happened. Derek and his crew arrived the next morning with equipment that looked like something from a science fiction movie. They spent hours walking my property with the radar device, marking spots with little flags. Around noon, Derek waved me over to the back corner of my lot, near the property line I shared with the community park. We've got something here. Big moisture pocket about 6 feet down. Looks like a major line runs right through here. Is it my line? That's what we need to find out. They brought in a small excavator and started digging. I stood watching, my stomach in knots, as they removed bucket after bucket of muddy soil. About 5 feet down, they hit something. Derek jumped into the hole and started clearing dirt away by hand. What he revealed made my blood run cold. It was a massive pipe, at least 8 inches in diameter, and it had a crack running along one side that was easily a foot long. Water was seeping out steadily, turning the surrounding soil into soup. Derek, is that my water line? He looked up at me, his face grim. "No way. This is way too big for a residential line. This is a main. This is infrastructure pipe." "What does that mean?" "It means this probably belongs to the HOA or the municipality. This is the kind of pipe that feeds an entire neighborhood or irrigation system." My mind raced. "So the leak isn't mine?" "Not unless you're running a secret water park back here. This has nothing to do with your house." Relief and rage flooded through me simultaneously. "Then why am I being charged for 3 million gallons?" Derek climbed out of the hole. "Because the leak is on your property and it's running through your meter. The water department doesn't care whose pipe it is. If it goes through your meter, you pay for it." "That's insane." "That's how it works, unfortunately. You need to figure out who owns this pipe and fast." I stormed inside and grabbed my HOA documents from the filing cabinet where I kept all my homeowner paperwork. Meadowbrook Heights was managed by the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association, and our current president was a woman named Brenda Patterson. I had met her exactly once at a neighborhood meeting 2 years ago where she had lectured everyone for 30 minutes about the proper shade of beige for mailbox posts. I found the HOA office number and called immediately. A nasally voice answered. "Meadowbrook Heights HOA, this is Brenda speaking." "Brenda, this is Connor Garrison from 1847 Saguaro Drive. I need to speak with you about an emergency situation." "Mr. Garrison, if this is about your lawn height, I already sent you a notice last week. The grass cannot exceed 3 inches per HOA guidelines. This isn't about my lawn. There's a massive broken pipe on my property and I just got a water bill for $250,000. There was a long pause. "I'm sorry. Did you say $250,000? "Yes. There's a main water line running through my back lot and it's been leaking for weeks. My plumber says it's not my pipe. I think it belongs to the HOA. "That's ridiculous. The HOA doesn't have water lines running through private property." "Well, there's one in my backyard right now, and it's broken and I'm being charged for it. I need someone from the HOA to come look at this immediately." Brenda's voice turned cold. "Mr. Garrison, the HOA is not responsible for your property maintenance. If you have a plumbing issue, that's your responsibility as a homeowner. I'm telling you, this is not my pipe. Then take it up with the water department. I have other matters to attend to." She hung up on me. I stood there holding the phone, absolutely stunned. Derek was standing in my doorway, covered in mud, and he had clearly heard the whole conversation. "She's a real piece of work, huh? I can't believe this. What do I do now?" "You need a lawyer, Connor. This is way beyond plumbing now." I spent that evening researching property law attorneys in Phoenix. Most of the consultations I could afford were with newer lawyers or small practices. I finally found a guy named Marcus Webb, who agreed to meet with me the next day for a free initial consultation. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant, which didn't exactly inspire confidence. But beggars could not be choosers. Marcus was younger than I expected, probably in his early 30s, with sharp eyes and an easy smile. I laid out the entire situation for him, showing him the water bill, the photos Derek had taken of the pipe, and the property survey I had pulled from my home purchase documents. He studied everything carefully and then leaned back in his chair. "Okay, so here's the situation. Arizona law is pretty clear that you're responsible for water that passes through your meter, regardless of where the leak is. However, if you can prove that the pipe belongs to another entity and that the leak was caused by their negligence, you can sue them for the cost of the water and any damages." "So I have to pay the bill first?" "Technically, yes. But we can file an emergency motion to prevent shutoff while we investigate. The first thing we need to do is determine who actually owns that pipe." "How do we do that?" "We need to pull the original development plans for Meadowbrook Heights. Those will show all the infrastructure that was installed when the neighborhood was built. If that pipe is on those plans and it's marked as HOA property, then we've got them, and if it's not on the plans, then it gets more complicated. But let's take this one step at a time. I'll need a retainer of $5,000 to take your case." I felt sick. Between Derek's investigation and now the lawyer, I was bleeding money I didn't have, but I had no choice. I agreed to the retainer and Marcus said he would get started immediately. Over the next week, things went from bad to worse. The water department sent a second notice threatening to shut off my service if I didn't pay at least $10,000 immediately. I managed to negotiate a temporary hold by providing them with documentation from Derek and a letter from Marcus stating that we were investigating the pipe ownership. Meanwhile, Marcus had filed requests for the development plans with the county and the city planning office. Then Brenda Patterson sent me a certified letter. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon, and I had to sign for it. Inside was a formal notice from the HOA stating that the excavation on my property was unauthorized and violated HOA guidelines. I was being fined $500 per day until the hole was filled and the area restored to its original condition. I called Marcus immediately. They're fining me for investigating the leak that's costing me $250,000. That's harassment. Don't pay it. Add it to our case file. What if they put a lien on my house? They can try, but we'll fight it. Connor, I need you to stay calm. I know this is overwhelming, but we're building a solid case. Have you gotten the development plans yet? They're supposed to be ready tomorrow. I'll call you as soon as I know something. That night I barely slept. I kept running the numbers in my head. Between the lawyer, the plumber, the water bill, and now the HOA fines, I was looking at financial ruin. I had already called my insurance company, but they had laughed at me when I tried to file a claim. Apparently, damage from external infrastructure wasn't covered under my homeowner's policy. Friday afternoon, Marcus called with news. Connor, I've got the plans. You need to come to my office right now. I left school the moment the final bell rang and drove straight to his office. He had the plans spread out across his desk. Large blue and white sheets covered in lines and notations. Look at this. He pointed to a thick line running across multiple properties. This is marked as a secondary irrigation main installed in 1998 when the development was built. It's specifically noted as HOA infrastructure, maintained by the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association, so it's their pipe. It's absolutely their pipe. And look at this notation here. It says that all HOA infrastructure is to be inspected and maintained on a biannual basis per Arizona State Code for planned communities. So they should have known about the leak? If they were doing their job, yes. But I did some more digging. I pulled the HOA meeting minutes for the last 3 years. There's no record of any infrastructure inspections, nothing. A spark of hope ignited in my chest. So they've been negligent, massively negligent. We've got them, Connor. I'm going to draft a formal demand letter today. We're going to demand that they take responsibility for the water bill, pay for all your expenses related to this situation, and reimburse you for the damages. What if they refuse? Then we sue them. And based on what I'm seeing here, we'll win. Marcus sent the demand letter on Monday morning via certified mail and email. We included copies of the development plans, the inspection reports from Derek, and a detailed accounting of all costs incurred. The letter demanded a response within 10 business days. I didn't have to wait that long. Brenda Patterson called me Tuesday afternoon, and she was absolutely livid. Mr. Garrison, I have received the most outrageous letter from your attorney. How dare you threaten the HOA with legal action? Brenda, your pipe has been leaking on my property for weeks. I have a $250,000 water bill. I'm not threatening anything. I'm asking you to take responsibility for HOA infrastructure. That pipe is on your property, which makes it your responsibility. The development plans clearly show it's an HOA irrigation main. I don't care what some dusty old plans say. If it's on your land, it's your problem. I forced myself to stay calm. Brenda, I have a lawyer now. All further communication needs to go through him. His contact information is in the letter. This is absurd. I'm calling an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss this ridiculous situation. Great. Make sure you bring those inspection records that show when you last checked the irrigation mains. Oh wait, you don't have any, do you? She sputtered. The HOA operates on a volunteer basis. We can't be expected to inspect every pipe in the neighborhood. Actually, according to Arizona State Code, you're legally required to. It's right there in the development agreement. She hung up on me again. I called Marcus immediately and told him about the conversation. Good. She's rattled. Let her stew for a few days. The more defensive she gets, the worse she looks. But Brenda wasn't the type to just stew. On Thursday morning, I found a notice taped to my front door. It was an official HOA citation stating that my property was in violation of community standards due to unsightly excavation and yard damage. The fine had been increased to $1,000 per day, and I was given 72 hours to remedy the situation or face further legal action from the HOA. I took a photo of the notice and sent it to Marcus. He called me back within minutes. This is retaliation, plain and simple. I'm filing a motion for injunctive relief this afternoon. We're going to stop them from fining you, and we're going to go after them for harassment. Can they really put a lien on my house? They can try, but not while we have an active legal case disputing their authority. Just sit tight. That weekend, things escalated even further. On Saturday morning, I heard a knock at my door. Standing on my porch was a man I had never seen before, holding a clipboard. Connor Garrison, yes, I'm Ted Fisher. I'm on the HOA board. I wanted to take a look at this pipes situation myself. I was surprised. This was the first reasonable interaction I had had with anyone from the HOA. Sure, it's in the backyard. Ted followed me around the side of the house to where the excavated area was covered with tarps. Derek had installed a temporary clamp on the pipe to stop the leak, but the hole was still open, waiting for a permanent resolution. Ted climbed down and examined the pipe carefully, taking photos with his phone. After several minutes, he climbed back out. His face was serious. This is absolutely an HOA main. I recognize this pipe. We have them running all over the development for the park irrigation system. Can you tell Brenda that? Ted's expression turned uncomfortable. Connor, I need to be honest with you. Brenda is a problem. She's been president for 4 years and she runs the board like a dictatorship. Most of us are afraid to challenge her because she retaliates against anyone who questions her authority. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I believe you, and this should be the HOA's responsibility. But Brenda is going to fight this tooth and nail because admitting fault means the HOA has to pay, and she's very protective of the HOA budget. Why? It's not her personal money. Ted looked around, as if checking to make sure no one was listening. Because she's been using HOA funds for personal expenses. Nothing huge but consistent. Dinners, travel expenses to conferences, that sort of thing. If this situation brings scrutiny to the HOA finances, people are going to start asking questions. Are you serious? Dead serious. I've suspected it for a while, but I've never had enough evidence to prove it. She controls all the financial records. Ted, you need to tell my lawyer this. He shook his head. I can't go on record. Brenda will make my life hell. But I wanted you to know what you're dealing with. Be prepared for her to play dirty. He left, and I stood in my backyard feeling like I had just entered a completely different level of insanity. This wasn't just about a water pipe anymore. This was about corruption and abuse of power. Monday morning brought more bad news. I received a letter from the water department stating that my service would be shut off in 10 days unless I paid a minimum of $25,000 toward my outstanding balance. I called Marcus in a panic. They can't actually shut off your water, can they? Unfortunately, they can. Water is considered a utility service and they have the right to discontinue service for non-payment. Marcus, I don't have $25,000. I've already wiped out most of my savings on legal fees and plumbing costs. I know, listen, I'm going to file an emergency petition with the county court today. We're going to argue that shutting off your water would cause irreparable harm while we're in active litigation to determine liability. It's not a guarantee, but it's our best shot. What if it doesn't work? Then you might need to take out a loan or work out a payment plan with the water department, but let's not go there yet. Give me a chance to work some legal magic. That afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Natalie Reeves. I live at 1923 Saguaro Drive. I heard about your water pipe situation from Ted. Can we talk? I called the number immediately. Natalie answered on the second ring. Connor, thanks for calling. I wanted to reach out because I think something similar happened to me last year. What do you mean? Last October, I got a massive water bill. Not as big as yours, but it was over $10,000. I fought it for months. And eventually the HOA agreed to split the cost with me if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. My heart started racing. Did you sign it? I did. I couldn't afford to keep fighting. But now that I hear what's happening to you, I think maybe there's a bigger problem with the HOA's irrigation system, and they've been covering it up. Natalie, I need you to talk to my lawyer. I can't. The NDA specifically prohibits me from discussing anything related to the settlement, but if they're doing something illegal, Connor, I have kids. I can't risk getting sued. I just wanted you to know that you're not alone in this. Brenda Patterson is a nightmare and the HOA is shady as hell. Watch your back. She hung up before I could press further. I immediately called Marcus and told him about the conversation. This is huge, Connor. If there's a pattern of problems with the HOA infrastructure and they've been forcing people into NDAs to cover it up, that's fraud. That's potentially criminal, Dalavy. But Natalie won't talk. She doesn't have to. The fact that she told you about it gives us a lead. I'm going to start pulling property records and water usage data for the entire development. If there are other anomalies, it'll show up in the public records. Wednesday morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. I looked out my window and saw a commercial excavation truck parked on the street in front of my house. Two men in hard hats were unloading equipment. I ran outside in my pajamas. "What are you doing?" The older of the two men looked at me. "Are you Connor Garrison?" "Yes, we're here on behalf of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA to repair the irrigation main on your property." I was stunned. "The HOA sent you?" "That's what our work order says. We're supposed to fix the pipe and restore the landscaping." "When did you get this order?" "Yesterday afternoon." Something felt wrong about this. I called Marcus immediately. "They sent a crew to fix the pipe without telling us." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Don't let them touch anything. This is a potential crime scene. If they repair that pipe, we lose evidence of the extent of the damage and their negligence." "What do I tell them?" "Tell them that the property is under legal dispute and no work can be performed without approval from all parties' attorneys. I'll send them a cease and desist letter right now." I relayed the message to the workers, who looked annoyed but agreed to call their supervisor. Within minutes, my phone rang. It was Brenda. "Mr. Garrison, you need to allow our contractors to repair the pipe immediately." "Brenda, my attorney has instructed me not to allow any work until we've resolved the liability issues. This is obstruction. That pipe needs to be fixed." "I agree, but we need to document everything first. You're not going to destroy evidence just to make this go away." "Evidence? This isn't a crime, Mr. Garrison. This is a simple property dispute." "Then why did you try to get Natalie Reeves to sign an NDA last year when she had a similar problem?" There was dead silence on the other end. I had taken a gamble mentioning Natalie, and it had paid off. Brenda knew she was caught. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Tell your contractors to leave. The pipe stays as is until we sort this out in court." The excavation crew left, looking frustrated. Marcus called me back 20 minutes later. "Connor, I just got off the phone with the HOA's attorney. They want to settle, already." "Yeah, your mention of the NDA spooked them. They're offering to pay your entire water bill plus $15,000 for your expenses." "What about the principal? What about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else?" "I hear you, but from a practical standpoint, this is a good offer. It makes you whole financially. I want more than that. I want a full audit of the HOA's irrigation system. I want them to inspect every pipe and fix anything that's damaged. And I want the settlement to be public record, no NDA." Marcus let out a low whistle. "That's aggressive. They're not going to like that." "I don't care. If Brenda is covering up infrastructure problems and misusing HOA funds, people need to know. I'm not going to be bought off, okay? But if we push back, this is going to go to court. That means more legal fees, more time, more stress. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Ted's warning, about Natalie's story, about the way Brenda had tried to bully me from day one. "Yes, I'm prepared." Marcus counteroffered that afternoon. The HOA's response came Friday morning. They rejected every single demand except the water bill payment, and even that was conditional on me signing a non-disclosure agreement and dropping all claims against the HOA. "They're playing hardball," Marcus said when he called to tell me. "I think we need to go to court. Then let's do it." Marcus filed the lawsuit that afternoon. The complaint named the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association, Brenda Patterson personally, and the HOA board members for negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud. He also filed a separate motion requesting that the court order a complete inspection of the HOA's irrigation infrastructure at HOA expense. The next week was relatively quiet, which should have been my first warning that a storm was coming. Then, on a Tuesday evening, I came home from work to find a notice taped to my door. It was from the HOA, informing me that an emergency special assessment had been levied on all properties in Meadowbrook Heights to cover unexpected infrastructure maintenance costs. Every homeowner was being charged $3,000, due within 30 days. My phone started ringing almost immediately. It was Ted Fisher. "Connor, did you see the assessment notice?" "Yeah, I just got home. Brenda is telling everyone that this is because of your lawsuit. She's saying that you're costing the HOA money and all the neighbors have to pay for it. That's insane. This is because of her negligence, not my lawsuit. I know that, and you know that. But half the neighborhood doesn't. I've already gotten angry calls from 3 different people demanding to know why you're suing the HOA. Ted. This is exactly what she wants. She's trying to turn the neighborhood against me. It's working. You need to be careful." Connor, he wasn't wrong. Over the next few days, I noticed a definite change in how my neighbors treated me. People who used to wave when they saw me working in my yard now looked away. Someone left a nasty note on my windshield calling me a selfish jerk. My next-door neighbor, a friendly older man named Ralph, stopped by to ask me directly what was going on. I explained the whole situation to him, showing him the photos of the pipe and the water bill. Ralph's expression grew darker as I talked. So Brenda is lying to everyone. Yes, she's trying to make this look like I'm causing problems when really I'm just trying to hold the HOA accountable for their own infrastructure. Ralph nodded slowly. Connor, there's something you should know. About 6 months ago, my son is a civil engineer and he came to visit. We were walking through the park and he noticed that some of the irrigation heads were damaged and leaking. He mentioned it to me, said it looked like the whole system was old and probably needed to be replaced. I brought it up at an HOA meeting. What did Brenda say? She dismissed it, said everything was fine and that spot inspections by residents weren't credible. She made me feel like an idiot for bringing it up. Ralph, would you be willing to testify to that in court? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I would. I'm tired of her bullying people. I called Marcus immediately and told him about Ralph. Marcus was thrilled. This is great. We're building a pattern of negligence and willful ignorance. If we can get a few more people to come forward, we'll bury them. But getting people to come forward proved harder than expected. Most of my neighbors were too intimidated by Brenda or too angry about the special assessment to want to help. A few people I approached told me directly that they thought I should just settle and stop causing problems. Then, things took an even darker turn. On a Thursday night, someone spray-painted "traitor" across my garage door in red paint. I called the police and a young officer named Rodriguez came out to take a report. Do you have any idea who might have done this? I explained the situation with the HOA. Officer Rodriguez looked sympathetic but not particularly surprised. HOA disputes can get ugly. We see this kind of thing more than you'd think. Do you have any security cameras? No, might want to invest in some. I'll file a report for vandalism, but without witnesses or footage, there's not much we can do. The next day, I bought and installed 3 security cameras covering my front yard, driveway, and backyard. Marcus suggested I also document everything that was happening with photos and dates. If this escalates to harassment, we can add that to our complaint, he said. Court dates in civil cases move slowly, and it took almost 6 weeks before we got our first hearing. It was a preliminary conference where both sides were supposed to present their basic arguments and see if the judge could facilitate a settlement. Marcus had prepared me thoroughly for what to expect. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that gave everything a slightly sickly tint. Brenda Patterson was there with the HOA's attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s named Ellen Kowalski. Brenda glared at me the entire time we were waiting for the judge. Judge Patricia Morrison entered and everyone stood. She was in her 60s with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression that immediately made me feel like we were in good hands. Good morning, I've reviewed the filings in this case, Mr. Webb. This is your motion. Please proceed. Marcus stood and laid out our case clearly and methodically. He presented the development plans showing the pipe was HOA property, the inspection records showing the HOA had failed to maintain it, and the documentation of the water bill and my expenses. He also mentioned the pattern of similar incidents based on Natalie's case and Ralph's testimony about previously reported irrigation problems. Judge Morrison listened carefully, occasionally making notes. When Marcus finished, she turned to Ellen Kowalski. Miss Kowalski, what's the HOA's response? Ellen stood smoothly. Your Honor, the HOA acknowledges that the pipe in question is technically HOA infrastructure. However, we contend that Mr. Garrison bears some responsibility here. The leak occurred on his property, and a reasonably attentive homeowner should have noticed the problem much earlier. Had he reported it when it first started, the damage would have been minimal. How exactly is Mr. Garrison supposed to have noticed a pipe leak 6 feet underground? Marcus interjected. Counsel, you'll have a chance to respond, Judge Morrison said. Continue, Ms. Kowalski. Furthermore, Your Honor, the HOA operates on a limited budget provided by homeowner dues. Taking on a $250,000 water bill, plus additional expenses, will require significant special assessments that will burden all homeowners in the development. We believe a shared responsibility approach is more equitable. Judge Morrison sat back. So your argument is essentially that the HOA acknowledges ownership of the pipe, but wants Mr. Garrison to share the financial burden because it's expensive. Ellen's professional composure cracked slightly. Not exactly, Your Honor. We're arguing that comparative negligence applies here. Based on what? Mr. Garrison's failure to have X-ray vision to see through 6 feet of dirt? I tried not to smile. Judge Morrison was clearly not buying the HOA's argument. Your Honor, Ellen tried again, the HOA is a volunteer organization serving the community. We don't have the resources for constant infrastructure monitoring, Ms. Kowalski. I'm looking at the development agreement right here. It specifically requires biannual inspections of all HOA infrastructure. When was the last time the HOA performed such an inspection? Ellen looked uncomfortable. I'd have to check the records, Your Honor. Because according to Mr. Webb's filings, there are no records of any inspections in the past 3 years. Is that accurate? We may not have documented every inspection, may not have documented, or may not have performed. Judge Morrison's tone was sharp now. Brenda suddenly stood up. If I may. You may not, Miss Patterson. Sit down. You're not an attorney. Brenda sat, her face red with rage. Judge Morrison turned back to Ellen. Ms. Kowalski, here's what's going to happen. I'm ordering the HOA to conduct a complete inspection of all irrigation infrastructure in Meadowbrook Heights within 60 days. That inspection will be performed by an independent engineering firm chosen by the court, and the HOA will pay for it. Additionally, I'm granting Mr. Webb's motion for preliminary relief. The HOA will immediately pay Mr. Garrison's water bill and reimburse him for documented expenses related to this incident. We'll continue with litigation on the question of additional damages and penalties. Ellen looked like she had been slapped. Your Honor, the HOA doesn't have $250,000 in liquid funds. That will require, then you'll need to take out a loan or levy a special assessment. That's not Mr. Garrison's problem. The HOA's financial mismanagement is not a defense to negligence. Order is entered. We'll schedule a follow-up hearing for 90 days from now to review the inspection results and proceed with remaining issues. The gavel came down and Judge Morrison left. I looked at Marcus, barely able to believe what had just happened. Did we just win? We won this round. The war isn't over yet, but yeah, that was a major victory. Brenda stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me, but Ellen Kowalski stopped Marcus on the way out. Your client should take a settlement, she said quietly. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Is that a threat? Marcus asked. It's a warning. Brenda Patterson doesn't lose gracefully. Over the next week, I waited for the HOA to comply with the court order. The deadline came and went with no payment. Marcus filed a motion for contempt, and we got an emergency hearing scheduled for the following week. At that hearing, Ellen Kowalski appeared without Brenda and looked thoroughly exhausted. Your Honor, I need to inform the court that I'm withdrawing as counsel for the HOA, effective immediately. Judge Morrison looked up sharply. On what grounds? My client has refused to comply with court orders and has made several demands that would require me to take actions I believe are unethical. I can't continue this representation. This was unprecedented. Judges hate it when lawyers withdraw mid-case, but Ellen looked genuinely distressed. Judge Morrison frowned. Does the HOA have replacement counsel? Not yet, Your Honor. Then I'm giving the HOA 2 weeks to retain new counsel. In the meantime, I'm issuing a bench warrant for Brenda Patterson to appear before this court and explain why she's in contempt. Mr. Webb, please prepare a formal contempt motion with detailed documentation of non-compliance. I left the courthouse feeling like I was in the middle of a movie. Ellen Kowalski caught up with me in the parking lot. Mr. Garrison, I probably shouldn't say this, but you should file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. I think there are serious financial irregularities with your HOA. What kind of irregularities? That's all I can say. But if someone were to request a full audit of the HOA's books, I think you'd find some very interesting things. She walked away before I could ask anything else. I told Marcus about the conversation immediately. She's telling you that Brenda is stealing, Marcus said, or at least misusing funds. Let's file that complaint. We filed the complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA compliance, later that week. They acknowledged receipt and said an investigator would be assigned to the case. Meanwhile, word had spread through Meadowbrook Heights about the court hearing and Ellen Kowalski's withdrawal. The neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. Ted Fisher called me. Connor, there's going to be an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow night. A bunch of homeowners are demanding answers about what's going on. You should come. Will Brenda be there? She has to be. It's required by the bylaws. The meeting was held at the community center, a small building near the park. When I arrived, the room was packed. There had to be 60 or 70 people there, which was unprecedented for an HOA meeting. Usually these things drew maybe 15 people. Brenda was at the front table with the other board members, looking defiant. The moment the meeting was called to order, hands shot up around the room. "Why haven't you paid Connor Garrison's water bill like the judge ordered?" Someone called out. "Where's the money from the special assessment going?" Another person demanded. "Why did our attorney quit?" "Everyone, please, one at a time. The HOA is dealing with a very complicated legal situation caused by Mr. Garrison's refusal to take responsibility for his property maintenance." "That's a lie," I said, standing up. Everyone turned to look at me. "The court has already ruled that the pipe is HOA property and that the HOA failed to maintain it. Judge Morrison ordered you to pay my water bill 2 weeks ago and you haven't done it. We don't have the funds." Brenda shot back. "Then where did the money from the special assessment go?" Ralph stood up now. "You collected $3,000 from every household in this development. That's over $400,000. That money is earmarked for other infrastructure projects." "What projects?" Ted Fisher was standing now too. "There's nothing in the budget about any projects." Brenda's face was turning red. "This is not the appropriate forum to discuss detailed financial matters." "Actually it is," Ted said. "The bylaws require financial transparency. I'm making a formal motion to conduct a complete audit of the HOA's finances for the past 5 years." "I second that motion," Ralph said immediately. "All in favor?" Ted called out. Nearly every hand in the room went up. Brenda looked around in panic. "This is highly irregular. We need to follow proper procedures." "We are following proper procedures," Ted said. "The motion has passed. We're going to hire an independent auditor. I'm the president of this board, and I decide when we hire auditors." "Actually," a voice came from the back, "you don't." A man I didn't recognize pushed his way to the front. He was in his 50s, wearing a suit. "My name is Gerald Shapiro. I'm an attorney specializing in HOA law. Several homeowners contacted me after the last court hearing to clarify the board's authority. According to Arizona statute and your own bylaws, the homeowners have the right to call for an audit by majority vote at any properly noticed meeting. This meeting was properly noticed, and the vote just passed. Miss Patterson, you're legally required to cooperate." Brenda looked around the room like a cornered animal. "This is a witch hunt. You're all ganging up on me because Mr. Garrison has turned you against the board." "No," a woman I recognized as living 3 doors down from me stood up. "We're ganging up on you because you've been lying to us and mismanaging our community. I got a water bill for $8,000 last summer that I could never explain. I paid it out of my own pocket because you told me it was my problem. Now I'm wondering if it was another leak in your failing irrigation system." Other voices joined in. It turned out several people had experienced unusual water bills over the past few years. Some had fought it, some had paid. Everyone was angry. The meeting dissolved into chaos, with people shouting questions and accusations at Brenda. Finally, Ted Fisher called for order. "Brenda, I think it's time for you to step down as president." "I will not." "Then we're calling for a vote of no confidence. All in favor of removing Brenda Patterson as HOA president?" The vote was overwhelming. Only 2 people voted against it. Brenda stood up, shaking with rage. "You can't do this. I've dedicated 4 years to this community, and we appreciate your service." Ted said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But it's time for new leadership." Brenda grabbed her papers and stormed out. The room erupted in applause. Ted was voted in as interim president, and one of his first acts was to authorize immediate payment of my water bill and expenses. The check arrived 3 days later, but the story didn't end there. The audit that was ordered revealed extensive financial mismanagement. Brenda had been using HOA funds for personal expenses for at least 3 years, totaling over $40,000. She had disguised the spending as legitimate HOA expenses, but the auditor found receipt after receipt for personal meals, spa treatments, and even a vacation to Hawaii that was supposedly a HOA conference, but had no supporting documentation. The Homeowners Association filed a criminal complaint against Brenda for embezzlement. The Arizona Department of Real Estate Investigation also found that the HOA had failed to perform required inspections for over 4 years, and that multiple residents had complained about irrigation problems that were never addressed. The infrastructure inspection ordered by Judge Morrison revealed that the irrigation system was in catastrophic condition, with 17 different leaks and dozens of corroded pipes that needed replacement. The total cost to fix everything was estimated at over $300,000. The HOA had to take out a loan and levy another special assessment. But this time everyone understood why it was necessary. As for Brenda, she was arrested 6 weeks after the audit results came out. I wasn't there when it happened, but Ted called me to tell me about it. She was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and several counts of violating Arizona HOA statutes. Her trial was scheduled for the following spring. Marcus and I settled the remaining aspects of my lawsuit. The HOA agreed to pay me an additional $50,000 in damages for harassment, emotional distress, and the vandalism to my property. They also paid all my legal fees. With that money, I was able to repair the damage to my yard, repaint my garage, and still have enough left over to rebuild my savings. The story made local news, and I gave one interview to a Phoenix television station about HOA accountability. Several other homeowners in other developments reached out to me after that, saying they were dealing with similar problems with their HOAs. I shared Marcus's contact information with everyone who asked. My neighbors, once they understood what had really happened, were apologetic. Ralph organized a neighborhood barbecue as a peace offering, and about 30 people showed up. It felt good to be part of the community again, instead of being the pariah. Ted Fisher turned out to be an excellent HOA president. He implemented new transparency measures, including monthly financial reports posted online and quarterly town halls where residents could ask questions. He also hired a professional property management company to handle infrastructure maintenance, taking that burden off volunteers. The hole in my backyard was finally filled in and re-landscaped. Looking at it now, you would never know that a $250,000 nightmare had taken place there. Derek, my plumber, came by one afternoon to check on how everything turned out. You know, Connor, in 30 years of plumbing, I've never seen anything quite like this situation. I hope I never experience anything like it again. The good news is that the HOA is actually taking maintenance seriously now. They hired my company to do annual inspections of all the underground infrastructure. That's going to prevent this from happening to anyone else. That was the part that made all the stress and fighting worthwhile. I hadn't just solved my own problem. I had forced accountability that would protect my neighbors. Brenda's trial took place the following April. I attended, sitting in the gallery with Ted and Ralph. Brenda had aged noticeably, her face drawn and her eyes hard. She pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for avoiding jail time, but she was ordered to pay back all the money she had taken plus penalties, totaling over $60,000. She also received 5 years of probation and was banned from ever serving on an HOA board again in Arizona. As she left the courtroom after sentencing, she walked right past me. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but she just looked away and kept walking. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, just relief that it was finally over. That evening, I sat on my back patio watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of orange and purple. My yard was green and healthy again. The sprinkler system that had caused so much trouble was now properly maintained. Everything looked peaceful. Marcus called to check in. "How are you feeling, honestly?" "Tired, but good. Like justice was actually served for once." "It was. You stood up when most people would have just rolled over and taken the loss." "That takes guts. I couldn't afford to roll over. That water bill would have bankrupted me." "True. But you also could have settled early and taken the NDA like Natalie did. You pushed for accountability and transparency, and that made a real difference." After we hung up, I thought about what he said. I wasn't a hero or anything dramatic like that. I was just a guy who got hit with an unfair bill and decided to fight back. But in fighting back, I had uncovered corruption, forced reforms, and protected my neighbors from future problems. The whole experience had taught me something important about HOAs and community living. These organizations have tremendous power over people's homes and lives. When they're run well by honest people, they can maintain property values and create pleasant communities. But when they're run by petty tyrants who see the position as a chance to wield power without accountability, they can cause real harm. I made a promise to myself that I would stay involved in the HOA going forward. I started attending the monthly meetings and even volunteered to serve on the landscape committee. It wasn't exciting work, but it was important. The best way to prevent another Brenda Patterson was to stay engaged and vigilant. Life slowly returned to normal over the following months. My teaching job kept me busy, and I started dating someone I met through a friend, which was a nice distraction from the drama of the past year. The legal bills were all paid off, my savings were replenished, and the vandalism to my property was a distant memory. One afternoon in late July, I received a letter forwarded from Marcus's office. It was from Natalie Reeves, the neighbor who had called me months ago to warn me about her own water bill situation. "Dear Connor," it read, "I wanted to thank you for having the courage to fight the HOA when I didn't. After hearing what the audit revealed, I realized that my problem was probably similar to yours, and I never should have signed that NDA. I've contacted the police and provided information about my case, which may help support the charges against Brenda Patterson. I also wanted you to know that your story inspired me to get more involved in our community. I'm running for the HOA board in the next election. Thanks for standing up for all of us. Sincerely, Natalie." I smiled as I read it. The ripple effects of standing up for yourself could be surprising and far-reaching. That evening, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Mr. Garrison? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Phoenix Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling about the Brenda Patterson case." My heart rate picked up. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine. I wanted to let you know that based on information we received from Natalie Reeves and our own investigation, we've uncovered additional financial crimes involving Ms. Patterson. She was also involved in a kickback scheme with vendors who were supposed to be doing work for the HOA. We're filing additional charges. That's good, I guess. What does that mean for her sentence? She'll likely face additional penalties and restitution. But I also wanted to thank you. Your willingness to push back and demand accountability opened up this entire investigation. We estimate that she defrauded the Homeowners Association of over $120,000 total. Without your lawsuit and the subsequent audit, we never would have found it." After the detective hung up, I sat there processing what she had said. $120,000. That was money that should have been used to maintain the community, and instead it had gone into Brenda's pocket. The next HOA meeting had a huge turnout again. Word of the additional charges against Brenda had spread, and people were angry all over again. Ted presented a plan to recover as much of the stolen money as possible through insurance claims and liens against Brenda's property. "We're also implementing new financial controls," Ted announced. "From now on, all expenditures over $500 will require approval from 2 board members, and we'll have quarterly reviews by an independent accountant. We're also requiring annual background checks for all board members and officers." The reforms passed unanimously. Meadowbrook Heights was being rebuilt from the ground up, and it felt good to be part of that process. In October, nearly a year after I had first opened that devastating water bill, I was working in my front yard when a car pulled up. A young couple got out and stood looking at the house across the street, which had a "for sale" sign in the yard. The husband noticed me and waved. "Hey, do you live in this neighborhood?" "Yeah, for about 7 years now." "How do you like it?" "We're thinking about making an offer." I wiped the dirt off my hands and walked over. A year ago, I might have warned them off, told them to run away from HOAs in general and this one in particular. But things were different now. "It's a good neighborhood," I said honestly. "The HOA had some problems in the past, but they've been cleaned up. New leadership, much better transparency and accountability. I'd recommend getting involved if you move here. Go to the meetings, volunteer for committees. The more engaged residents are, the better the community runs." The wife smiled. "That's good to hear. We read some stuff online about legal problems with the HOA?" "Yeah, that was my case, actually. Long story, but the short version is that the previous HOA president was corrupt and negligent. She's been removed and charged criminally. The new board is solid." We talked for a few more minutes, and I gave them Ted's contact information in case they wanted to talk to the current HOA president. As they drove away, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I could recommend my neighborhood now because I had helped make it better. The years that followed brought continued improvement to Meadowbrook Heights. The irrigation system was completely replaced with a modern, efficient setup that included leak detection sensors. The HOA built up a proper reserve fund for future maintenance. Property values in the neighborhood actually increased because of the improvements and the reputation for good governance. Brenda Patterson's additional charges resulted in more restitution requirements, though I heard she had to sell her house to pay everything back. I never saw her again after the trial. As for me, I learned that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Fighting the HOA had been stressful, expensive, and scary. There were moments when I wanted to give up and just accept the financial hit. But standing up for myself had not only saved me from ruin, It had helped an entire community. I kept the original water bill, framed, hanging in my garage. It was a reminder of how one moment can change everything, and how important it is to fight for justice even when it seems impossible. Every time I looked at that ridiculous number, $247,042, I remembered that accountability matters, and that ordinary people can make a difference when they refuse to be bullied. The pipe that had caused all the trouble was now just a properly functioning part of the infrastructure, doing its job quietly underground. My yard was beautiful, my finances were stable, and my community was stronger. That water bill had been the catalyst for real change, and while I would never want to go through that experience again, I was glad that I had. On warm evenings, I still sat on my back patio, watching the sunset. Sometimes neighbors would stop by to chat, and occasionally someone would ask about the Great Water Bill Incident, as it had come to be known in neighborhood lore. I would tell the story, though I tried not to bore people with too many details. The lesson I would tell them was simple: know your rights, stand up for yourself, and don't let anyone bully you into accepting responsibility for something that isn't your fault. HOAs can be great when run properly, but they require engaged, informed residents to keep them honest, and always read your water bill carefully. You never know when a broken pipe 6 feet underground might cost you $250,000 and change your life forever.